Welcome to Community Roundtable. I'm Nick Burns from the Salt Lake Community College Division of Communication and Performing Arts. And today on the show, it's cans, bottles, paper, those blue curbside bins, recycling. But to be effective, recycling requires both individuals and organizations. Are we doing our part at home, at work, at school? So today on Community Roundtable, we talk about what you recycle and what your neighbor can recycle, and we look at how one Utah college recycles everything, from packing peanuts to concrete blocks. Joining us, he is the Salt Lake Community College Recycling Coordinator, Sean Stanton. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate the opportunity.
So you are the guy at Salt Lake Community College. I mean, there's some part-time workers, but this is your thing.
It is, yes. I am the full-time employee for the entire recycling department.
And does that make Salt Lake Community College unique? Do other institutions have a Sean to do this?
Other institutions do have a me doing it, a recycling coordinator. It's actually a position that you'll find at probably most universities and colleges around the nation.
Okay, so we're getting a little more progressive then.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so as I mentioned, people think of those blue curbsides, they think of paper, and you throw in your plastic and your soda pop cans, maybe some glass, so you pay separate for that. I presume the college recycles all of that stuff.
We do, yes.
And that's probably pretty straightforward.
It is, yeah.
So, but what about things like batteries, paint, electronics, concrete?
Yeah, we recycle all of those actually.
So like how can that possibly work?
So it's all about source separation, really. We have to make sure that all those things get separated out. For instance, something like batteries, we have buckets set out throughout different campuses next to recycle bins that people can put their batteries in there. And then the college actually pays to recycle those. We don't get paid for regular alkaline batteries, things like AAA, AA, C batteries, but we feel it's important to keep that out of the landfill, so we make the effort to do it. Things like concrete, for instance, like our construction crew here at the college in facilities, the carpenters, whenever they're tearing up sidewalks or something like that, we'll actually bring a bin over to them and they'll deposit all the concrete in them, and then we actually bring it to a vendor, Asphalt Materials, and then they can recycle all of that. So it just takes a lot of coordination with different departments and good communication to try and get out there and let people know that, yeah, we do take all these different items and we try and recycle them as well as possible.
So for batteries, you have to pay to get them recycled?
Not all batteries. Things like car batteries, we actually get paid for.
Because of the lead, right?
Yeah.
So that's valuable. Mm-hmm. But concrete, are we making money recycling concrete?
No, we usually pay to recycle concrete.
You have to pay to do that?
Yeah.
So overall, if you look at the whole entire recycling operation that you run, is this revenue neutral, or do we make money recycling, or is this costing us?
Oh, it's definitely costing us.
Okay.
Recycling costs everybody. There's no program that I know of that recycling doesn't cost. So. Well,
there'd be a social cost regardless, right? Even if you were throwing it in the landfill, there'd be a social cost.
Absolutely.
But you're talking there's a fiscal note in essence.
Yeah, definitely. It does take a budget to run. We do have big vehicles that have to bring these huge roll-off containers to the appropriate locations. We do have a full-time employee like myself. Yeah. We have part-time employees who go around and service all the bins. And so there is definitely a cost associated. And the money, the small portion of the money that we make from all the recyclables that we try and sell to different vendors throughout Salt Lake Valley here, that money we just try and essentially put back in the program if we can to subsidize cost. Fuel costs for the vehicles, maintenance costs for vehicles, supplies, bags, cleaning materials, things like that.
Well, or to pay for the students who work the part-time jobs and all. So what are the things we can make money on? Cardboard?
Yeah, actually,
glass?
so not glass.
Okay.
Glass, fortunately there is a vendor here in Salt Lake that does take glass, because not everywhere takes glass. You have to have somebody who's set up for it.
And it's heavy.
But the materials that we actually make money on, metal, we actually have a lot of scrap metal here at the college. Cardboard, paper, aluminum cans. If it's a really good year, maybe plastic, but right now with the downturn in commodities that are mainly tied to oil prices, not plastics, but some certain types of batteries as well we can get paid for too. And so there's lots of different materials that we actually do get some return for.
So as an employee here, I use the recycle bins here and whatnot. Should I be thinking, gosh, I should buy my breakfast drink or whatever in a can because the college is more likely to make money on it than drinking a bottle?
You could do that if you wanted to. That's up to you. The money that we get from something like for aluminum, for example, we've seen a huge downturn in the market over the last couple of years. Like I said, it doesn't mean that we're going to stop recycling that, but for vendors, it's difficult for them to try and turn a profit because recycling is very much governed by the private industry. And if those guys aren't making money, then they're just either going to take less stuff or shut down potentially. But, for something like aluminum, we don't get much on it. We get a little bit, but we've seen a huge downturn in prices on that commodity.
Aluminum, energy intensive to create,
yes.
Easy to recycle.
It is easy to recycle.
Since energy prices are down, some people would be inclined to just use new, right? Why bother, right?
In some ways, yeah.
So what about all the tree trimmings and all that green stuff? That's easy to recycle, right?
We do, yeah. We recycle all of that. We work with our grounds department here at the college, and we actually have bins set up at the different campuses that they can, deposit tree trimmings in, grass clippings, flowers, all that type of stuff. And then we actually take it out to the Salt Lake County landfill, and there's a spot out there that they actually have a big, huge grinder. They compost it, and then they actually turn around and sell the compost.
Right. So, you can get that for your garden at home, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay, what about food waste? Is that recyclable?
It is, but you have to be set up for it. And so that's something that we'd actually like to branch into. The only place right now at the Culinary Arts Building, they were given a grant and they have a composter in the back of their kitchen there. We're trying to get one for the Redwood campus, but they're very expensive. And unless you can find a grant or somebody who's willing to fund it, it's difficult to break into the food and organics, but that's definitely the way that almost all recycling programs for cities, big universities are definitely trending and going towards, because there's a lot of that's getting thrown away, that's increasing, their trash and decreasing their diversion rate. So now they're trying to divert that stream as well, which I think is fantastic and hopefully something we can get into here at the college.
You can't do something as simple as find some pig farmer who would like all the food waste and feed their hogs?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. The thing that becomes difficult about it is again, separation. So if I put up a couple of bins in, the food court, if people throw a lot of trash in there, which is undoubtedly going to happen, somebody somewhere has to take that out. And
you got to take the styrofoam cups out of the food waste.
It's labor intensive. Or for instance, if there's things like dairy or bones or things like that, those wouldn't be able to go in it. But actually, recently here at Salt Lake, there's going to be a company bringing in an anaerobic digester, and they'll actually be able to take all of those types of things, the dairy, the bones, all that type of stuff. And so when that happens, we've actually been working with Momentum Recycling on potentially, making that a possibility to bring our stuff to them. It just depends on how much we would have and how much it would cost us. So we're still kind of trying to work out the financials to see if that can happen. So
anybody taking the food grease from campus for their little Volkswagen diesel or something?
So the kitchens actually do recycle their cooking oil and things like that. There are companies that definitely do that.
Cool.
So yeah, what they'll do is they usually put it in a big, huge metal drum and they'll put it on the back dock, and then a company will come in and basically just pump the drum, and they'll reuse the oil. So,
and what about water? Do we recycle any water?
That's something that I think the grounds department uses some different types of water for the irrigation. That canal that runs along the Redwood campus, for example, I know that they use that type of irrigation water for all of the different sprinkler systems.
We're not using potable water to irrigate, right? They have irrigation rights out of that little canal, but that's useful. It's not exactly recycling.
Not quite, yeah. Water is a whole different one. That really probably has to go through, a city department or a county department for water that has the setup to maybe try and do something like that.
So we need to take a quick break, but when we come back, I got a 2-page list here of things that blows my mind that we all recycle. So I want to ask about some of those specifically.
Sounds great.
Keep it tuned to Community Roundtable. When we come back, we'll talk some more with Sean Stanton about recycling, and specifically recycling right here at Salt Lake Community College. Keep it tuned. Welcome back to Community Roundtable, talking with Sean Stanton about recycling and recycling here at the Community College. Does your job, do you approach things differently when you're out, say, at the Automotive Trades building and dealing with their motor oil as opposed to the motor oil at your own motor pool? Or, do you have to do things differently when it's academics or facilities?
Not really.
Okay.
We can actually, we would handle it the same anywhere we go.
Okay.
Just like if we would put a bin out at this campus or another campus to collect, plastic bottles or aluminum cans or something like that. I mean, when we collect oil at the Miller campus, or if we collect oil at, a different department or on a different campus, we would handle that all the same. We usually have a vendor that comes in and can recycle that
Who
oil.
wants that stuff?
Exactly.
Right?
So,
Even if it's okay. So, does the college have to follow any rules or laws or guidelines? Are there any mandates to do any of this, or we're just good people?
There's actually no state laws saying that, we have to recycle things like plastic bottles or aluminum cans or paper or cardboard. There are laws obviously governing things like, waste oil, antifreeze, hazardous materials, which the college does have. And so we definitely follow the law in terms of, making sure that we're not landfilling these items that are harmful to the environment. We're having a private vendor come in that we pay to properly treat these, types of things. But in terms of, any types of laws out there governing recycling as a whole, there really aren't any for the state of Utah.
So it's kind of the Wild West in a pun.
It is. It really is.
So there's laws about how to deal with motor oil, but whether or not you recycle it or just properly deal with it, that's up to the college to figure out.
Yeah. And so that's why we use a private vendor who comes in and recycles it, that we know takes care of it properly. So
I printed off a list here, and this is what I do because I'm a research guy. 150,000 pounds of scrap metal in 1 year.
Yeah.
70,000 pounds of paper. And then there's a thing here, single stream, 55,000 pounds. What's that mean, single stream?
Yeah, so that's essentially that's your commingled recycling. And so at some of our outer campuses, we don't have the means to source separate. So everything goes in, just like if you would roll your blue bin that you have at your house out to the curb, it's paper, cans, bottles, cardboard, all that stuff. So that's what single stream means. That's how the industry refers to it.
Okay, so that's like the bins where drop your cans or your bottles or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So everything recyclable goes into it.
Which of course makes it easier for students and faculty and staff. So you're likely to get more stuff, right? The more you ask the consumer to do work, the less happens, right?
That is true. That is very true.
Sad but true. 1,000 gallons of oil.
Yep.
150 gallons of antifreeze. 1,600 toner cartridges.
Yeah, we go through a lot here.
And so we don't reuse them. We just recycle them, and somebody else refurbishes them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's how that works.
Wow. This thing about concrete just trips me out. Recycling 30,000 pounds of concrete a year, but I mean, we are full of construction.
Yep.
There's a whole big long list here about e-scrap, about electronics.
Yeah.
And I know a few years ago there was all kinds of scandal in the media about these overseas third world country electronics recycling, leaching terrible chemicals and everything into the ground. For these things that we're recycling, computers, monitors, displays, all that kind of stuff, what happens to it? Is it going overseas or?
Good question. So we actually use a local vendor. We try and stay local as much as we can.
Okay.
On some items, we have tried to look out beyond Utah to see if we could ship things to certain vendors who would take them. But ultimately, we do like to stay in state as much as possible to, reduce our carbon footprint and keep things locally. So they go to a vendor, and usually what they'll do is I've actually been to our vendor that we currently use is ATR, and they're out in Tooele. And they have a big, huge shop there where they actually take all the computers apart. They have all these air tools and everything like that where they disassemble all the different parts. And they actually will usually sell the scrap, like the motherboards and things like that, where, companies will go in and try and harvest the precious metals off of them. Do they necessarily end up overseas? We're told that they don't. I mean, we try and go with companies who we know are using vendors that are trying to properly treat these. And we've talked to other companies, for instance, like on the East Coast, who say we absolutely will not send things overseas because they've been over there, they've seen how bad the conditions are. So we try and as much as possible use companies who are going to do things right.
But in this case, at least some of that initial work's right here, like the disassembly and whatnot. You might have to ship the printed circuit board somewhere else to get the solder and the gold and everything out, but that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
If I have a TV set or a computer at home I want to get rid of, can I bring it here and have the college do it?
You probably used to be able to, but there was actually recently a policy change in that. I guess a state auditor came in and said that you can't use the college for personal gain, any type of things, that would be considered that. So if somebody came and brought me their TV and instead of them paying for it, we would pay for it. So that got I guess.
Oh, I see, because if
Yeah.
you want to recycle a TV or a computer, you used to have to pay 20
Yeah.
bucks.
Yeah, because what you do is you'll take it to an electronic vendor, and you usually have to pay a fee for that. And so, in terms of taking stuff for people anymore, we're probably not going to be doing that.
You'd
but-
have to charge the money and pass through, right? To you.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we would encourage them to go to a vendor themselves to do it. So
And is it beyond your job to figure out if there's an old computer, does it go in the recycle bin or does it go into surplus where you sell it to the public? I mean, how do you make that distinction between somebody else reusing it or it's time for the scrap heap?
yeah, that's a great question, Nick. So actually what happens here, anytime somebody's getting rid of something, if it's college property, the rule that I've always followed and that I've always been told is it all goes to surplus first. Surplus then takes it, our surplus department, they figure out if they can either reuse it, put it back out on the college, or if, for instance, if it's something old like a computer that doesn't work anymore, and they can't sell it, because they always try and sell it first by the state laws and things like that. And if they can't, then it would come to recycling, and we would use our vendor and recycle it.
So somebody might want to buy an old laptop or it might
Absolutely,
just be
yeah.
a boat anchor to recycle.
And they sell that at surplus. They sell a lot of stuff, from the college, old laptops that still work, computers that still work, couches, all
Furniture.
sorts of things. Yeah.
I saw here automotive plastic bumpers.
Yep.
From, what's this, from car repairs out at Miller?
Yeah,
That you're doing for people?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Miller campus, they
Totally cool.
Yeah, what they do is they have a body shop there, and when they get a pile of bumpers, we'll go over there and we actually can give them to our vendor. Rocky Mountain Recycling takes all the bumpers and they can recycle them. So
And they get melted down into new bumpers?
or they'll get shredded. Usually, a lot of times, what happens is they'll get shredded, and then if it's a different composite, depending on the plastic or whatnot, then yeah, it would go into that stream, and it would get probably melted back down, and then refurbished, put back into use or something like that. So.
And I also see here, and this is a huge one nationwide and worldwide, car tires.
Yeah.
You could, what happens?
Yeah. So what we do is, we've worked with automotive department and our mechanics, on campuses and stuff like that. For instance, like at Redwood, I work with our fleet maintenance mechanic and things like that. When there's old tires that the college has, what we do is we take them all to Liberty Tire, who's a vendor up in the north part of Salt Lake. And they actually, what they do is they shred the tires, they pull, the metal out from it, and then they can use the rubber again, actually, and they can actually make new tires. So from that. So yeah, we recycle all the tires that we can from here.
I mean, it used to be that for a while there, they would shred tires and mix them with asphalt and put them back on the road,
They can do that too.
which is
yeah.
kind of weird. And then here's one that I have to ask about. I mentioned it before, but how do you recycle paint?
Yeah, so paint's one that usually what we'll do is we'll bring it out to the Salt Lake County landfill, and they have a hazardous waste, like a household hazardous waste site there. So you can bring a lot of stuff to them if you're a county resident for free, actually, since you pay taxes. You can bring them old cans of insect repellent like Raid and things like that, TVs, electronics. You can also bring them things like paint and stuff like that. And so what they'll do from there is they will actually, usually it'll get disposed of, and I'm not entirely 100% sure if they're sending it to a vendor who will do it, or if it just gets incinerated. So But
so it can be recycled, but that's beyond the scope of it's something you just
yeah,
push off,
exactly.
somebody else works with it.
Exactly.
So I have to do another quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about what happens out in the community.
Sure.
I mean, this is what we're doing on campus, but I want to know what you know about what goes on elsewhere.
Absolutely.
So keep it tuned. We'll be back. We'll talk more about recycling with Sean Stanton from Salt Lake Community College. We are back on Community Roundtable. Sean Stanton, thank you for being here talking about recycling.
Absolutely.
Here we are at the college. We've got students, low income, maybe living in apartments, maybe their apartment buildings aren't doing recycling. What should those people be doing about recycling?
Well, that's a really great question. I get asked that by students actually too, who live in apartment complexes. And for most apartment complexes throughout Salt Lake Valley or even just in Utah, recycling is not mandated. There are a few that do it, but very few from what I've seen. They can find community drop-off points.
Okay.
There are places that will absolutely take their things, whether it's either a recycling vendor, somebody like Rocky Mountain Recycling who would gladly take their cans or things like that. Or for instance, like here at the college, we actually have a community drop-off point on the Redwood campus. It's actually right off of Redwood Road and Bruin Boulevard. There are a couple of bins out there that we work with the county on that people can actually bring their things to. There's a glass bin there, there's a clothing bin there, there's a bin there for like old books, CDs, DVDs, things like that, and then there's 2 blue cans there that they can put everything in, from paper to cardboard, plastic bottles, aluminum cans, all those types of things too.
So the college is actually making it so students can bring their recyclables to campus.
They could.
I mean, not everything, obviously,
Sure,
as we were
sure.
talking earlier. I mean, that's totally cool.
Yeah, we do that.
So, so students aren't recommended to just bring everything and put it in the little blue bins around campuses, right? That's just
not necessarily, but
making
they
extra
could
work.
if they wanted to. I mean, I probably wouldn't. I mean, we do have some people, funny enough, who will just bring huge bags full of glass and try and fit them in the bins around campus. And I mean, we'll take it, but if I saw that person, I would probably recommend to them to just take it to the glass drop-off
take it to
point. So instead, but
so. In consumer-driven economy that we are, right? Throwing stuff away has to be easy, right? You don't want to fix a toaster, you want to sell somebody a new one.
Sure.
So you're like the recycling guru guy, but what do you tell people? Recycle or just reuse and don't buy new?
In terms of that, for me, I really don't promote any of those types of messages for the most part, of trying to tell people how to use and don't use their stuff.
Okay.
I'm really over just the recycling for the college, so that's the main thing that I focus on. If you asked my opinion, although, sure, I would tell people, try and reuse things if they can, try and reduce if they can, really, because the message of reduce, reuse, recycle really should follow that order, is reducing, reusing, and then recycling should be the last
step, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, don't replace it quite so often, right?
Hopefully not.
Yeah, okay. So we got a few minutes left. 3 things that people could easily do to recycle more. What would you tell people?
I would tell people, probably number 1, you probably want to have 2 cans in your house or your apartment. If you don't have 2 bins, everything's probably just going to go into the trash. So if you don't actually have, a trash can and then a recycle bin in your house, the odds are you probably won't recycle very much. And so that's probably my number 1.
That's funny. My kids told me, they were like, we have to go all the way to the garage to recycle. And I'm like, oh, cry me a river. So okay, make sure to have a bin so it's easy to do.
Yeah,
okay.
I would say that because, again, convenience is everything, especially in our economy, right?
Yeah.
I would definitely tell them that. Something else, advice that I would tell them to do, everybody always will ask, what can I actually recycle? And that's a fantastic question, and it actually varies. It depends sometimes on the different city or the different county you might live in. They might take certain items and they might not take other items. So I would actually say to look up on your city website or your county website potentially to see which items you can actually recycle. Because like I said, in some cities they might take more, and in other cities they might take less. And that just depends on who, what vendor that city is using.
So it works with.
Exactly. Because
So, I mean, that's a good point, because we think of this one huge metropolitan 1.5 million people Wasatch Front, but it's multiple cities, and what West Valley does isn't going to be what Salt Lake City does.
Yeah, not
Good
necessarily,
point.
especially up in some more rural areas of Utah that might not even recycle, or if they did, it might be very limited. You might have to bring your items to one central place, and they might only take, certain types of plastic, like 1s and 2s is pretty typical, or only cans or something like that. So I would definitely say that as well is a good guideline for people, because they always want to know what can actually go in there. And then I would say probably my 3rd point is just try and be a little bit more conscious of what you're doing. I talk to a lot of students here and different people, and they say, it's just not something I think about on a day-to-day basis. They go to put something in the trash, like a perfectly good aluminum can, and it's not that they don't want to recycle, it's just that they weren't necessarily thinking about it. So I always tell people, think before you throw. So that's probably
So here we are at a college campus, and we've got to convince people to become conscious about their, okay.
We sure do.
We'll save that for another. So have 2 bins, learn what's good in your neighborhood and what works in your city, and then just be conscious about what you're throwing away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense. What gaps do you see here at the college for recycling?
I think that there's several. I think that sometimes there's a disconnect between, what we're trying to do And again, just people being, aware that there is a program here, and that if they just made a little bit more effort to walk 5 more steps to the recycling bin next to them, I think it would make a huge difference, because we actually see a lot of stuff get thrown away in the trash. Twice a year, actually, we do a waste audit with the environmental science class here at the college, and we take a week's worth of trash from the SI building at the Redwood campus. And we rip every bag. We rip every bag open. And we have a really great teacher, Jessica Berryman, who promotes it, and it's a fantastic learning opportunity for students here, and they see all the stuff that gets thrown out that could have and should have been recycled. And typically we find 30 to 40% of a week's worth of trash consistently is all recyclable materials: cardboard, paper, cans.
Wow. Why don't we make that a mandatory class for everybody? Talk about consciousness.
Yeah, it really does turn a lot of lights on, and it's really great to see students. It really opens their eyes to things, and the teacher definitely drives the point home. She's just like, are you going to think next time before you just put something in a bin? And most of them are like, yeah, definitely. So it's a fantastic learning opportunity that we've set up with them, and I think it works great.
Not to mention you're keeping all that out of the landfill, which again, we're running out of space and money and everything else. So one more question. We've only got a minute or so left. What do you wish you could recycle here at Salt Lake Community College that you can't or don't?
Probably like what we talked about earlier, food. I would definitely love to get into that more, but like I said, it's complicated. There's definitely a lot of money that we would have to, put into it to get, a composter, to get bins, to, get educational material, to, make sure that, we can do it. But that's an area that, again, I think everybody across the nation is starting to break into more, and I would definitely love to see the college go in that direction as well.
I mean, we do have our college community gardens. If you could deal with the food waste and compost it ourselves and make our own mulch and whatnot. Wow.
I've talked with Sean Crossland about that, actually. Okay. So yeah, from the Thanes Center. So we've talked that would be the ultimate goal, is to use the compost from the college in the gardens, which ultimately comes back to the brew and cupboard for students. So just complete that full circle. There's
got to be a professor to teach that class too, don't you think?
I hope so.
Very good. Sean Stanton, SLCC Recycling Coordinator, thanks for taking time to be with us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And come back again when you got something new going on.
Definitely. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Community Roundtable. Go to slcc.edu for information about all our academic and community programs, and go to slcc.edu for current and future student resources and to find out about all events going on campus. That's slcc.edu. I'm Nick Burns, and we'll see you next time on Community Roundtable. Thanks for tuning in.